Hi, Christina Dalcher.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you to be our guest for the Lab magazine.
It's an honor. Thanks for having me
here. The honor
here.
is for us. Thank you very much.
Well,
so
all right. We're both honored.
Okay,
all right.
That's great. That's good news for today.
We're both honored. Double honors.
So, we're here to talk about your, we call that in French dystopie. Do you say that in English also?
We do.
Dystopia?
We do. We pronounce it a little differently, but yes, it's
How
the
do you
same
say
word,
it?
dystopia.
Dystopia, okay. So, Vox. A dystopia is kind of story that's not happening in real, kind of 1984, like for George Orwell, is the same kind of stuff. So
well, let's
talk about this.
Let's talk about this. Let's clarify this. You're right. That dystopia is something that's, well, actually, I'm not even going to say that it's not happening, really. That's fantasy.
Okay.
Let's talk about dystopia in the context of utopia.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Utopia, wonderful society, everything's perfect, Shangri-La, Lost Horizon. Dystopia, the exact opposite.
Okay. Something really wrong. The worst case scenario?
Really,
something like that?
Well, I won't say it's the worst case scenario, but there's something wrong.
Okay.
Right? It's the opposite of a perfect world. It's the antithesis of a perfect world. So we could refer to something that's happening actually as dystopic or dystopian. I think dystopian doesn't have to just be a label that we use to describe fiction. Well, it could be real. It could be so bad that we're living in a dystopia. We're living in something that is the opposite of a utopia. I mean, look, for just a classic example, not to get too religious or something, but look at the traditional ideas of heaven and hell. Heaven is a utopia. Hell is a dystopia. Okay? The positive and the negative. We got to go back to the ancient Greek to get these.
Okay, it's really interesting because I hear in dystopia the word "dis" that we can find again in dysfonctionnement.
Absolutely.
There is something like kind of little cancer.
It means not.
It means not. It's not working.
Right.
It's something that goes
There's
wrong.
functional and there's dysfunctional. Functional functions. Dysfunctional does not function. It's just a negator.
Okay, great. So this is Vox. This is something that's going wrong. What's going wrong in Vox?
What's going? Oh, pretty much everything. I think we've got a small but powerful, extremely fundamentalist faction in the United States that has effectively bought the presidency. The president is nothing more than a puppet. So now we've got this extreme religious group that's running the country. And they've decided, and this is the interesting thing about dystopia, because depending on whose perspective you look at it, it's either a utopia or a dystopia. So if you think about the Pure movement in Vox, their idea of going back to this culture of domesticity, for them, it's a utopia. It's the ideal, right? Just like George Orwell's Oceania. Yeah. That was, for the people who founded it, that was a utopia. Yeah. For the rest of the people who don't fit in with that regime, it's a dystopia. It's quite interesting when you talk about the interaction of utopia and dystopia, because whenever you have a dystopian novel, let's look at The Hunger Games, another really good one from recent years. The people in the capital are living in a utopian society. The Hunger Games. Yeah,
but which means we find this again. I was thinking about something really different, like La Flûte Enchantée, Zauberflöte. If you look at this opera, it's also a utopia, but it's the worst case of utopia you can find. But for some people, the heaven for some people is the hell for others.
Very touché. I don't know this from French. I know this because I took fencing classes.
Okay. The touché is said in English, like we say déjà vu.
Exactly.
Déjà vu. Okay.
Touché. There you go. You got it.
Okay. So this is how what's happening in
that's exactly it. So but I think if we look at any dystopian fiction, film, book, whatever, we're going to see exactly these two things: the heaven for somebody and the hell for somebody else, right? So there's always this utopian element, even though that utopian element to us seems twisted, right? Of course, how could it possibly be a utopia to slap a word counter on, on little girls' wrists and say you can only speak 100 words a day?
So let's back to the history.
Now,
because I feel like with you we can talk about philosophy, and I love that very much. But let's enter again about to the story. So the story is that women can talk only 100 words a day. Which for me would be a nightmare because I have 100 words a minute. So I don't know how I could exist in that world. But anyway, for me it was like nightmare, the hell. And they have bracelets. So if they speak too much, they get back. They have an
electric shock.
Electric shock.
Right.
Okay. And how did you imagine that women could survive with this?
Well, I think people will adapt to anything.
Or resist?
Oh, of course they'll resist. But we were talking about, you asked about surviving.
Yeah.
So how would they survive with it? There aren't really many things that you can do when you're in that kind of a situation, right? I mean, it's sort of like, we could look at prisoners of war. I mean, we can talk about prisoners of war.
Yeah,
what do they do? Okay, well, they survive, they resist, they, escape.
Yeah, okay.
Except sometimes they can't, right? So, and the same thing with the women in Vox. I mean, if they don't have any power to escape, if they don't have any power to take these counters off, then their only choice is to deal with it. And some of the women actually do, which is interesting. They're kind of embracing this culture of domesticity. Jean, not so much, no. But again, she doesn't really have much opportunity to resist until
struggling with that.
Something happens that allows her to take the wrist counter off, right? But initially, she gets her 100 words. She really just doesn't have any way out at first. So it's very bleak, actually. The beginning of Vox is a very bleak and kind of depressing scenario.
Yeah, it's depressing, but sometimes you feel like she's struggling with that. I think maybe I'm wrong, that some people are more made for dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
And others are made to not deal and to not accept so easily. And it's not so comfortable for them because they're always struggling.
Right.
Submission is not something that everything can deal with.
I certainly can't deal with it very well, no.
Yeah, for some people it seems so easy, because if I see that with personal life, you see in society, you see people that accept so easily to submit,
we're all different,
to deal with it. And for others, it's like a war inside, and they're struggling, and they're ready to have. Jane is ready sometimes. One moment she's like getting mad, and I don't care. If I get this electric shocks, I don't care.
Right. There is that. I mean, that's being fed up. And so in that sense, she is resisting. She's definitely speaking out, as opposed, she's basically decided that she's not going to play by the rules, right? Which is probably what I would do in her position.
Yeah. Maybe.
I hope
also that in my position, I think, but we're not in the position, that I'd rather suffer from the punishment. You see that? Punishment, than from accepting stuff.
Yeah. And
you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
There is a balance. Am I suffering more in accepting stuff?
Exactly.
Or am I suffering less in having a punishment, but being myself?
Right. And this is one of those classic questions that we can hypothesize about, but we can never really know what we would do until we're in that situation. It's a classic case of, they can torture me all they want. I'll never talk. I'll never tell them where the money is, right? And, and then they start sticking things under your fingernails. And really difficult to tell what any of us would do in a situation like that.
I have this sentence. I say it in French. Que chacun d'entre vous, au lieu de considérer ses propres intérêts, considère aussi ceux des autres, comme Christ comme le Christ s'est rendu obéissant jusqu'à la mort, même jusqu'à la mort sur la croix. So it's talking about the fundamentalism, like that we have to accept everything to obey. Is it the rule that invokes to just obey without thinking, to sacrifice?
You mean for the women to obey their husbands?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part and parcel of the culture of domesticity. The culture of domesticity was a late Victorian era movement or kind of societal construct. And within it, there was this notion of the true woman. And the true woman had 4 qualities. Feminine, she had to be feminine, she had to be pious, she had to be virginal, and she had to be submissive. And this was taken straight out of certain biblical verses. That's where this comes from. This is a classic biblical division of gender roles, separation of gender roles. And then I mean everything in when Jean has to speak those phrases, those sort of mantras into the new counter that she gets put on. Every single one of them is in the King James Bible. I didn't make them up.
No. But it's frightening because there is some stuff you can recognize in that book of our living. That's kind of frightening. But you get scared, but at the same time you say, no, it's not real. But some stuff are really happening. And is it only about women, Vox? Your message is for me more.
Well, good. I'm glad. Vox is superficially about women. Okay. If we dig a little bit, just like Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 is superficially about burning books. Yeah. I mean, there obviously there's the plot, but then there's the message underneath. The message underneath is that we need to use our voices while we can. The message underneath is that nobody has any business silencing anyone else, and that doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man or a goose or a cat. I mean, we just don't have any business telling people what they can and what they cannot say. So I think that
is this about democracy?
As opposed to totalitarianism, yes, I believe that totalitarianism is bad. I think freedom is good.
That's nice.
I think freedom of choice is good. Freedom of speech is good. I think freedom of religion is good. Freedom to choose our own paths in life is good. I think.
But we are not in this now.
We are not in what now?
Like when you see reality, it seems, and you read your book, it seems okay. We superficially, we declare that we are free. Yeah. But sometimes when you recognize some stuff in your book, then we get a little bit anxious because you are not sure that we're in this anymore. Sometimes it's like when you read the book and you recognize some stuff about the reality we already know. Yeah. We are getting kind of anxious.
Yeah.
Because maybe we say we are in a democracy and we are free, but we're not that free.
Yeah. I agree with you. Probably in a different way than you suspect. I agree with you.
Okay, let's say but it's dangerous, when you're in a totalitarian regime, you know that you can't express yourself. But when we say that we are in democracy, then you think you're free, but then you see that you're not that free.
Right. Well, we certainly have some problems right now with censorship. In the United States, very much. I think when I lived in England, I saw the same thing. There was quite a bit of suppression of speech. Generally, because I think we are developing a stronger idea of hate speech and hate speech that is criminalized and whatnot, which we could talk about another time. But the fact is that, in my country, we're experiencing silencing from, all kinds of different parts. I mean, the Democrats don't want to listen to the Republicans. The Republicans don't want to listen to the Democrats. If you go onto a college campus and there's a conservative speaker, even slightly conservative, right? I'm not talking about, way out there, towards fascism. I'm talking about slightly conservative. If the student population protests enough, the university will cancel that speaking engagement. Okay. So
I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's really tricky.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Really tricky. What do we do about this? Should we say that certain people are not allowed to speak because we don't like what they say?
Because we just want to hear. There is a study from the Harvard school that says that we just listen and watch and see information from people who agree with us, whom we agree with.
I think that's a tendency. Of course, that's then a choice. I mean, that's a choice. Then that's us filtering out what the other people are saying. But that there's a difference between that and actually